Hello, everybody. It's Nana Dazi here again with another session on loss and coping with loss. Today, I have Richmond Ampiah-Bonney with me, another old boy from Infant School. I think he was a year or two behind me. We affectionately call him Bond. Richmond lost his dear wife last year, and he's been brave enough to join me here to touch on this very sensitive yet important topic. Welcome, Richmond.
Thank you very much, Nana. Thank you.
I really appreciate you being here today. And it's been a bit over a year since Olivia passed, right?
Yes. April last month, April 12 was a year. Okay. And so, yeah.
And how are you holding up?
Overall, comment I give is by God's grace, but just as well as we could. There are the ups and downs, and probably more downs than ups, but the ups are dramatic. So overall, sort of an even keel.
Okay. Now you had 3 children together?
We have 4.
4, okay.
4 children together.
4 together.
And then we adopted 1. Okay. So makes 5.
Oh, wow. 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 So, and how long were you together?
35 years. Wow. I consider, from 89 to, maybe my math is getting off, but we met in 89. So 89 to 2022, somebody do the math on the side. But yeah, that's how long we were together. We were married for 25 years. I think that's
25 years. Okay. Okay. All right. So was she your first love? Was it love at first sight, or did it develop sort of slowly?
Yeah, this is all of the above. Okay. So when we were in infant spim, all through that time, I was very shy of ladies, very, very shy. And so I wouldn't, I admired some of the friends who would have girlfriends in Wesley Girls and Holy Child, but that wasn't for me. We met when we came to UST, KNUST now, and we were in the same class. Okay. What got us together was, here is a lady, very respectable. I came into the chemistry program as a rebound. I wanted to go to medical school, and the grades didn't work out well. She was in chemistry because that was her love. She loved chemistry.
Okay.
And so we got together as steady mates, and we found that we had a lot in common. And one of them was her love for humor. So we could laugh about mundane things. And so that's how we got together as steady mates and friends. And we spent a lot of time together, partly because we liked each other's company, but also because the course was very intense. It was a 3-year program, which should be a 4-year program. And now it's a 4-year program. Okay. So we got to be friends naturally that way. And as time went on, I think, the human heart sort of gets affectionate with each other. And so that's how we got to know each other. So she was the first lady I got to be with. Was it love at first sight? No, because at the beginning, we were not thinking about love or anything like that. But when it got time to get married, it was an obvious choice. For many people, many people had seen that long before I had come to that place. And so, yeah, that's how we got together.
Okay. So you really became friends before the romance.
Very good friends. Okay. Really, really good friends. To the point that, and since we were not committed to each other, we were interested in each other's welfare. And interest, not in the sense of curiosity, but in the sense of care. And so if there were instances when there was a gentleman who was interested in having a relationship with her, she would get all the information and bring it to me to do the investigation for her. And, and the same way for me as well. And we'll do really good background information. I'll send it to her. She makes her decision, and so on. So we were really, really good friends.
Okay, that's great. Now, I know you're a professor of chemistry, right? So,
yes.
And she was a chemist too. Was she also a professor?
No. So she's more imaginative than I am. So I stayed with chemistry. After the degree, I continued a couple of master's degrees and came to do the PhD here. She, after the chemistry degree, she came to do a master's in wood technology. It was a relatively new program at KNUST, and she was the first lady to have been admitted to and to graduate from the program. So her focus was wood preservation. And she was very passionate about that. So she did that, and after graduation was teaching in the, civil engineering department of Takrady Polytechnic. When we got married, she had to leave the country and join me because I was first in the UK and then here. So when we came here, then we tried to get her into a PhD program in forestry, where she would do her wood preservation. We got admission, but funding was a little more tricky.
It was a problem,
So she went into nursing. So she moved from chemistry to wood technology and then into nursing. And at the time she passed, she was almost through a PhD program in nursing.
Wow. So she was a lady who believed in going all the way.
Very much, and in doing what was practical for the moment. And so she had no qualms flipping when it was necessary to do so.
And how were your conversations? Because both of you were really, I would say, intellectually inclined. But then you also found humor in little things, which I find very interesting.
Our conversations are, how do you say, very, very funny and very healthy. It wasn't, rarely was it academic. So we rarely discussed chemistry or except when we joined the undergrad days and we had to. It ranged on all topics. And I remember that when we met at first, now my roommate in tech, Kofi Apiedu-Mensah, you may know him, we were really close.
He was in Moche too,
Olivia, right? And Kofi knew that we were not sort of an item. But then his problem was, I don't see you anymore. You're always with this lady, and so many of our conversations are about our daily struggles, things that we find joy in, and then teasing each other because both of us are Christians. She's a very good Christian, but whereas I'm of the Methodist and hymn-loving kind of inclination, she loves her Pentecost songs. And so, she knows that, and she'll be playing Pentecost songs, and I'll be like, when are you finishing that? Can you widen your scope a little bit? She says, not everything is hymns and stuff like that. And sometimes she'll play hymns just to tease me and stuff like that. So we knew each other very well. I mean, we really, really got to know each other. And probably you can see me struggling to find a topic of our conversations because we just talk.
Outside of my range. Now, so you've known this person for all these years. You are really friends, and as you go through this progress of grieving, talking about those Kubler-Ross stages, where do you find yourself?
I think I have just begun to accept the fact that I won't see her physically anymore. And I think that turnover was around the first anniversary. So that's where I am. Immediately after she passed, I'll say I went into an sort of a robotic mode where I disconnected from any feelings, and because I had to do stuff, organizing the funeral, checking about the status of the children and things like that. And I felt that, maybe I'm wrong, but I felt that if I touch base with how I was feeling, I wouldn't be able to do those things properly. So for the longest time, I was just going along, and I heard a lot of people commenting how brave I was and how I can still keep a smile. And but it wasn't. It was just what had to be on the surface. As time went on, like people say, as the crowds dissolved away, I had moments to more and more to sit with myself and assess the new situation. And it just started sinking in at the first anniversary. So that's where I am.
Were you ever consumed with anger in those months?
Anger, no. And I don't know, perhaps it's because I've not given anger a space in my life in a long time. So, anger, no. Sadness and disappointment, big time. Lots of disappointment.
What was the disappointment driven by?
First of all, talking to a doctor, very disappointed in the medical profession. I know, in my mind and logically that nobody went in there, talking about the medical professionals, to cause harm. I don't think so. I think they went in thinking they were doing something good. It turns out, at least in my opinion, that they were negligent in something that they should have figured out before doing the surgery, and which, if they had figured out, they probably wouldn't have done the surgery. And so, as I say, with the first cut, she was done for. There was no coming back. And part of my disappointment too is failure to acknowledge that fault. I may understand that there are legal repercussions for which reason they may not want to, but I wanted just the decency of somebody saying, we made a mistake and we shouldn't have made this call, and we made this call. And then there were, they were, according to at least some of the information I got, they were trying to blame her, in terms of, she had, there's a term for it, which you might pick out when I say this, but, she was obese and she was this and that. And my point was, they got her to go through so many steps, losing more than 100 pounds, doing a mammogram, doing so many things to clear herself to qualify for the surgery. And our understanding was, if you don't do this, we won't be comfortable. We will not do the surgery. And so for you to come back and say, this was because she was obese, well, you cleared the weight with which she was coming in. And so that was a huge disappointment there. Part of the disappointment too was how much effort she put in. She did everything she was asked to do, and there was a lot. There was a lot to do. I remember, especially when she had to go for a mammogram at a moment when she couldn't stand on her feet, and you know how the mammogram is done. So
yeah,
she had to be propped up in a very awkward way. She did it all in the hope that this will go well. So that was my source of disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry about how everything went down. It's difficult to judge not being
Yeah.
involved in their care.
Mm.
And again, I'm
Yeah.
really sorry for that.
I understand.
Have you overcome the disappointment, or does it still well up every now and then?
It's something I've not dealt with, and so I've not overcome it. I am hoping to get an opportunity, and I don't know how that will work out, to talk with someone. It looks to me like it might happen after probably another 2 years, because I don't think any of them would speak to me before the 3-year limit on within which I could bring up a case, which I'm not thinking of that anyway. And so I wish that could come earlier, but otherwise, yeah. So I'm still harboring that. I'm trying not to let it consume me, and so far, I don't think it has, because I've been very busy with many other things, especially including the children.
The children.
And so,
yeah. Wow. So, how are they holding up? How are the children holding up? How old are they?
I have 3 24-year-olds. And so my twins, my first were twin boys, and then Jojo and Kojo, and then Noah, who joined us later, is also 24. And
That's
then
the one you adopted?
That's right, yes. Yeah. And then Ajua is 22, who just graduated from college last week. And then a 13-year-old, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And then 13-year-old Ekua. So those are the age ranges. And to your question, how are they doing? They've done much, much better than I feared. Much better. They've been strong in their own different ways. All of them, except Noah and Ajua, were able to come to the hospital and see Olivia in the last moments, which I debated a little bit about it, but I thought it was important that they see her. And Ajua was not able to. She was in Rochester, New York, and it's about a 5-hour drive. I had some really, really good Samaritans who drove in and tried to bring her back before, but she arrived 3 hours after my wife passed. And after a couple of days, she had to go back to school, come back for the funeral, and go back and complete a semester. So I was really concerned about her. She's doing very well. All of them have been in therapy, and that has been very helpful for them. My second son had to take a year out of school because of everything, and he just went back this spring semester, and he's carrying on.
He's carrying on, yeah. Now, did you go through any therapy yourself?
I tried, and it didn't work for me. Probably because of my expectations, and I always I always not blame it on, but explain it that I grew up differently from my children who all grew up here, and I think the system of therapy here works for those who grew up in this culture. My way, what makes me what works as therapy for me is being among people with whom I can freely have a conversation. And, so I find a lot of my therapy in a church with fellow parishioners, and here at school when I'm teaching with my students. And the class I was teaching was very, very wonderful in how they close together, came round me and supported me, and they come around every time. I have many of them, a Korean student who came in and brought certain items which he said was what they used to grieve in Korea, and thought it would be helpful to me. And that brings tears and what makes you know you're being cared for. So that's how I've cared for myself. I had about 3 sessions with the therapist, and it wasn't working for me. So yeah, but it.
Okay. So when you say it wasn't working, I get the fact that you prefer being among people. There's a certain warmth in a crowd, I would say. What was it about the one-on-one that didn't really work?
And again, it might be this particular therapist style, but a lot of it was us staring at each other and her asking, do you have any questions? And then when I say anything, how do you feel about that? And at that time, probably I wasn't processing much. And then there will be moments of silence, about 3, 4, 5 minutes of silence. And I ask her, do you expect me to ask any question? And then she'll say, well, do you have any questions to ask? And so, which is why I thought probably in this culture, it makes sense to let the person come out with what they're feeling rather than impose. I needed somebody to help me come out of where I was,
where you were,
touch base with me and come up with me. And so that was, and personally too, I don't do very well with silence.
Okay.
I fill my time with sounds. I could be working and focusing on the work, but there's some classical music in the background and stuff like that. So dead silence is difficult for me to work on. To her credit, I mentioned that, and she, did a little bit more about being more upfront, but I could tell that wasn't her style. And at the same time, she was meeting with my children separately.
Yeah.
When I asked them, they said they were fine with it. And so, now they moved into college and so had to change therapists because they had to use a therapist in college. And but that's, I think, why it could well be that I wasn't in a good place to
Did you ever think of changing therapists? Maybe finding somebody else with another kind of therapy style?
I didn't. I think at that point I decided probably prematurely that no, this thing is not going to work for me. Right. And by the way, this therapist came highly recommended to me because they had been very successful to work with a colleague of mine here in the college who had lost his brother. And the colleague is a minority, so the recommendation that came was, this therapist is really good to deal with folks who are not completely brought up in the American culture. But I didn't.
So you've already touched on the fact that the kids were very helpful in sort of dragging you along, your college students. What else was very helpful in this time?
Very, very helpful was community. Oh my goodness, I can't say enough about I have across the street, there's a Kenyan family, and I didn't know that they have a community of Kenyans, all the way from Boston through Western Mass. And what he and his wife did was they latched into that community and brought them around me. And so they basically told me, when do you want to do this? And what do you want and just leave the rest to us, leave the organization, leave the fundraising and everything to us. Now, that's one group. The second group is the church, which, Olivia is a member of the church too. And so they were around me throughout the ordeal after the surgery and a few days before she passed. They were the ones who got me to bring the children to be with Olivia before, which in retrospect was a very, very important decision to do. And then Mobile 85 was really, really helpful. Can't say enough. Hopsa 86, Olivia's classmates, they are the most wonderful band of sisters anybody can get. And I say that as one who, how children behave. Sometimes my kids will say, "Oh, you're the worst daddy in the whole world," when you don't give them something.
Yes,
and my
exactly.
response to them is, "Really? Have you checked with all daddies in the world?" But Hopsa 86, very supportive, very, very supportive from day one. Since then, last Thanksgiving, for example, which would have for the first Thanksgiving we're having without Olivia, they insisted on providing the Thanksgiving meal and made an order. And they called me and they said, "Have you bought a turkey?" And I thought that was a weird question to be asked. Well, I'm going to buy one. "Have you bought it?" I said, "No, don't buy it," they say. It's okay. What do? You drive to this place, we've placed an order, and you pick it up, and that's for us. And so those are the groups that have come around and supported me. I must mention my colleagues here in Amherst College too.
Okay.
So the community really, really came around. The service that was at, which I call the celebration of Olivia's life, was the first time that our new chapel, which was built in 2006, was full. I mean, really full, and standing room for others. And it was really overwhelming to have that kind of community support. Yeah.
You mentioned that you find solace in I wouldn't say noise, but in crowds, in people talking, in the sound of music, things like that, in community. What do you do when you're alone? How do you cope with that when everybody's gone and you're by yourself?
Those are very, very hard moments and very dark moments. I remember the first time I came back to the same bed that we shared. And in the beginning, about 3 or 4 a.m. every morning, I'd just be waking up and just crying for about an hour and a half, just crying. And I was glad I could do that in the room and not let the children see me in that kind of state. What has been very helpful is the car. Very good place of I'm able to cry and to shout and to vent when I'm in the car. And I remember I spoke to a gentleman. He's in Ghana now. Was many years my junior. Actually, I think he was. I left sixth form before he came to Form 1, and I had no idea that he'd also lost his wife. And so when I was having this conversation with him, I could tell that this is somebody who has walked the road. And one of the things he said was that tears and driving don't go together. So he said, pull over whenever, or pull over and give yourself the time. So I have found moments. Another space I give myself is this office. So I have, privacy in my office. And I would shut everything out and maybe put on some hymns. But there have been quiet moments. In my quiet moments, there's a lot of crying. a lot of sad. That's where I mentioned disappointment and sadness. That is where the sadness comes in.
Okay.
And I have spent a lot of quiet moments at Olivia's gravesite as well. It's about 4 minutes drive from the house.
Okay.
But thankfully, it's in a place, it is not on my usual route. So I have to decide to go there.
Okay.
And that has been a place of relief, actually, when the sadness is getting to be too much. I go and spend some time there. So
now to track back a little bit, was the surgery elective or was it something that needed to be done? Without boring too much into that.
Yeah, no. It's a good question because it's somewhere in between. It was kidney transplant surgery.
Okay.
So in the sense that she had been doing dialysis for years before then. You could say it was elective in that sense, but for quality of life,
of course, I mean, it's
necessary. So it was a transplant, something she'd been looking forward to. Both of us had been looking forward to for a long time. So
you're right. Did when you go to the gravesite, what do you talk to her?
I do. One thing that has been, and people have various ideas about whether to speak to the dead or not. And for me, she's not dead. She's the same person I've known for 32 years, now 33. And so, yes, I speak to her like I would normally. And I find myself, reporting what's been going on at home and the difficulty I've been having. And sometimes I know she might be laughing at me and I express, don't laugh and stuff like that. So probably if somebody were watching from a distance, I will catch a very interesting figure standing there. And and so I have conversations with her. Last Christmas Day, during the Christmas, we all had the flu. And, she's been on my case every time to take the flu vaccine. She would kick us to go and she would get the kids to go and do it. And I'll be the one not doing it. And, so of course, we didn't take the flu vaccines. And so everybody had the flu in the house. And on Christmas Day, my youngest had a high fever and it was pretty serious. When stiff, we called the doctor and it was resolved. So when I went there next, ground was full of snow and everything. I told her, yeah, I know what you're going to say about. So we do that, and I continue with that because that's how we've been since we met in '89. We talk about anything and everything, but both the reverent and the irreverent.
Yes.
There have been times when, on the anniversary of the day that we were called, we were informed about the availability of the donor kidney. The sadness was really, really, intense because I know in my mind I shouldn't blame myself, and I know that she doesn't blame me, but there is still that, I rushed from school, came home, gave her the ride, to the hospital, so there is that deep sadness.
Are you saying she shouldn't have gotten the donor kidney? Is this something you tell yourself that maybe she shouldn't have gone for the donor kidney?
Oh, definitely she shouldn't have gone for it.
Why?
Because what happened was during the surgery, they figured out she has what they call porcelain veins, which means if you cut them, the deep ones, you can't sew them back again. So once they cut those, they just couldn't. So she bled, basically. She bled to death. Yeah, so I'm very strongly feeling that, which is why I was saying earlier on that if they could have figured that out, if they had, we wouldn't have gone in. But
yeah, just to give a little bit of, sometimes what you find once you open is unexpected. If I can you not all the not all the um what's the word I'm looking for? Not all the
yeah,
investigations you do before can give you a really fair idea of what you are going to walk
mm,
into. I know
okay.
this might not help, but
No,
there,
it's
there's
good to know. This is the kind of conversation perhaps
yes,
that I'm looking
yeah,
to have with,
yeah,
those who took care of her. And so it thank you for that.
yeah. In as
Um,
much as medical science is gone, that's why tests have specificity and sensitivities. So
mm,
nothing is really 100% in predicting what you might see,
mhm,
but it's
mhm.
that's just to tell you that don't blame yourself too much if you do
Yeah,
about making that decision, because there is no dialysis patient under this planet who does not want to have a kidney. You know,
that is very true.
yeah,
That is very, very true.
yeah,
She wanted it. I wanted it for her.
yeah.
And yeah.
Which brings me, she must have been. Life on dialysis is not easy.
Oh
There's
my
that
goodness.
there's that constant tiredness. So with
Mm,
5 children,
yeah.
6 including you,
Yes. Very true.
a job as a nurse and a PhD student.
Mm.
How did she manage?
Oh, she's terrific. She is terrific. She has some strength in her. I don't know where she got it from because, we started first on hemodialysis and
Mm-hmm.
then we were encouraged to go on peritoneal dialysis.
Peritoneal dialysis, yeah.
And we did peritoneal dialysis for a while. And then the machine or the company was shifted to another one.
Mm-hmm.
And we started having problems with infection.
Mm-hmm.
And, about that, it's the worst infection you can have because by the time you figure out you have the infection, you have microorganisms that you are feeding with with the right food and the right temperatures. And so her infections were terrible, abdominal pain,
Mm-hmm.
and it would take about 3 weeks in hospital to get
Mm-hmm.
her off and then rehab. And she had this about twice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was so this is normal dialysis, like you're saying, is difficult to deal with. And then when you have to combine with these, and
Yeah.
after one of those infections, she lost the ability to walk.
Okay.
So she was in a wheelchair and she did a lot of rehab. And by the time we were going for the surgery, she had worked so hard that she could walk. How far from the back of the church to the front?
Okay.
And I can talk about that because the last day she came to church, that's what she did. And I was going to support her. She said, "No, I'm going to do this on my own." And she did that. And so yes, it was really difficult to do that. But for us, and especially for her, whenever any difficulty arose, her focus was on what can I do to make it go?
Well, yeah.
What can I do to make it go? And she focused much more on that than on what she was going through at the moment. And then of course the rest of us rallied around her. The other thing that also made her very focused, I think, was her family situation. And so she's the youngest of 3 siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And as at this time, both her elder brother and elder sister had passed on.
Okay.
And then she lost her dad. So she was the only one left with her mom. So she was really focused on getting better so she could go spend some time with her mom. And I think that drive, together with her faith, she was praying. She was a very, very prayerful person. And only issue I had with her prayer was the time she chose to pray, which is midnight to 2 o'clock.
You know,
But
that is when you have probably the most silence, right? So, you know,
definitely,
yeah,
definitely, yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and especially when we're doing peritoneal dialysis, that was when we set her up and everything was relaxed and calm and quiet, and she was going through the exchange, and so yeah.
Yeah. I gleaned that we haven't really talked about it, but your faith was also a huge sustenance. When this happened, did you ever doubt it? Did you ever question it? Did you ever ask yourself why?
Um, I am still asking why, but I'm asking God why. I have not lost my faith, perhaps because I've been so steeped in it.
Yeah.
And one thing is, so I teach chemistry here, but
Yeah.
somehow the students have figured out that faith is a strong part of my life. And so a week before the surgery, a Christian group on campus invited me to speak. And I'm just trying to connect this with how my faith works. And the topic they asked me to speak on was why or how you continue to serve God in a place where, in circumstances that are unfavorable. And to them, being a liberal arts college in a place like this, being a Christian is not the most fashionable thing. And so I was trying to, give them as much as I had. Then one lady asked me, how about when you're suffering? Why should you continue to serve God? Another student quipped in, oh, because you're afraid? And I said, I hope not. But for me, the reason why I continue to serve God is because I look at what God has done with me in times past, difficulties that I've gone through in times past that He's worked with me. And so I can trust Him to work with me through this. And exactly a week and a few days after, I had to inform these students that I'm in this kind of space. And, so no, I didn't lose my faith, but it was shaken. For the longest time, I wasn't praying. I couldn't bring myself to pray. What I felt though was lots of people praying for me. And so spiritually, it felt like I was being carried, born on, carried by friends and supporters. I'm still asking God why. Ultimately, I know that I don't have the big picture, and I've had enough experience of not knowing the big picture and the anxiety that you have with especially my pre-med students. Pre-med students, I teach intro chem. They come into my class and they don't do well in one quiz or one exam. And they say, that's it, that's the end of my medical school dream. And I'm thinking, no way, this is just one test. But if I don't pass chemistry, I can never go to medical school. And I'm sitting there looking at the big picture of you graduating with a good GPA, getting a good MCAT and stuff like that, and thinking, knowing that what you're worrying about now is not the end all be all. But to them at that moment, that's what it is. And so that's where I place myself, that I'll get to understand better. And even if I don't, I think it's something I will live with. But at this moment, I've not lost my faith. I'll say it's not as strong as
it used to be.
Perhaps it was before. And how do you measure the strength of one's faith? I don't know. But I'm being supported a lot by community, by church, both Christian and non-Christian. Are really supporting me, and I appreciate that.
That's great. So you mentioned earlier that you've gotten to the acceptance stage, which is great. And there are people and there are writers who think after that stage comes the stage of giving meaning to what happened. And Without jumping the gun, have you ever well, we've touched on this lightly. You ask yourself, why did this happen? But have you ever sort of tried to give some meaning to what happened?
If I have, I've found nothing.
Okay.
Because
You're not
right
there
now,
yet.
where I stand, it was unfair.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it was unfair. It's a sad situation. So I don't see any good in this, in the sense of
You don't
of
see any
meaning.
silver lining in that cloud at all at the moment.
I don't see one. What I know though, and that's what I'm going to work on. What I know from experience so far is that the way God relates with me, whenever anything terrible happens, God brings out of it something much, much better and something that I would not have thought about. And there are so many examples I can give, including my relationship with Olivia, which I consider, that probably I didn't deserve, but she would say otherwise, and most of her friends would say otherwise. A lot of steps in my education, things in my education journey, things seem to have gone down at one point, and everything looked like, things were not going. But it turned out that negative place brought out something much better than what I was going in for. And so I am standing on that.
Okay.
See, there must be, if God has done that for me in the previous experiences, he must have something. But I don't know it now.
But you are patient enough to know that.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you ever think Olivia would want you to move on, find somebody else, start another?
Very funny. Yes, I think the problem would be me moving on, but for her, yes, she would want me to. I told you we had conversations about all sorts of things, and Olivia had, and even earlier before she got sick, what about, hey, if I die, who would you marry? And I'll be like, oh no, would you marry a Chinese or a Spanish? No, go for a white lady or something like that. And a sort of irreverent joking kind of stuff. So if I imagine Olivia here by now, she'll be saying, which of the ladies are you looking at? And stuff like that. Yeah. She would want me to move on. I think it's so far, it's very hard for me to think about that sense of moving on. That I take moving on in two ways. One of which I'm doing now to carry on, especially being there for the children, being there for myself and stuff like that. But in the sense which I think you're talking about, I don't even want to think about it yet, though I have to, because it just brings the pain. The reality of the pain that she's not here. She would want me to, because she knows me. And I think I will at some point. I don't know. I don't know when.
How do you think the kids would take it?
One of them asked me directly, are you going to get married again? And I was at the point where, like I just told you, just the thought of it was painful to me. So I expressed that to him. And I also told him, this is the oldest one who was asking me this. And I told him, it's a possibility. And he says, okay. He said, okay, you do what you need to do. And, so I think they'll be rational about it. Perhaps the one for whom it will be most difficult, and I'm just guessing, who knows, will be the youngest one. For whom the concept of, is this another mommy? Or, might be a little difficult to deal with. And so, but the rest of them, the way I see it, the other thing that happened too was after Olivia's death, I realized that they became very protective of me. When I went out previously, they wouldn't call me and ask me when I'm coming home. Oh, but after that, they'll call me and ask me, when are you coming home? Are you all right? Do you need a ride? Do you need me to come on and give you a ride home?
Oh, that's sweet.
So that has brought, perhaps these are silver linings I've not seen, I've not acknowledged. But I have a feeling that at least the first four of them, the oldest four, will be fine. I'm not too sure about the youngest one.
Yeah. You'll be surprised. You will be surprised.
Okay. Thank you. And she's going through, she likes the therapy that she goes to. And that brings me a lot of satisfaction, to the extent that she reminds me that we have therapy at this time, and and I drive her in. And so, and I know that is doing a lot of good for her. And I'm thankful.
So how is Olivia's mom hanging on? How's she doing?
She it's very hard for her. It's very hard for her.
How old is she?
She's 79.
Oh, wow.
I think she'll be 80 next, on the 11th. She'll be 80 on the 11th. And I know that because we were planning Olivia's memorial on the 11th. And I figured out it will be her birthday. So we'll do it on the 10th. So I'll be going to Ghana shortly. So she'll be 80 on the 11th. Wow. She, again, how we deal with things in Ghana, as in you always think there must be some cause or you did something wrong. Or she's asking herself, all her kids and her husband, everybody's gone except her. I have assured her very much, and I think she knows that I'm there with her. And when she says, I've lost all my kids, I say, no, you have me. And you have one more kid left. So she's, some days are good, others are better for her. Physically, she's dealing with, the usual aches and pains of her.
Yeah, she's almost 80. Yeah.
Almost 80, but she's a strong woman, to have weathered that kind of storm back to back to back. Thankfully, she has two grandsons who live with her and who give her a lot of support. And I'm thankful for that too. Because, thanks for asking.
Oh, God, thank you so much for this. So a bit to recap, you've been held by the support of community. You've been held by the ability to sometimes just cry alone in your bedroom or in the office or in the car. And therapy didn't really work for you. But these other things and your faith, which has been a bit shaken, but you think that others are pulling you, carrying you, and you're sort of on the wings of others, which also brings us back to community again. And that the fact that no one is really an island and no one should be an island is very important in these cases. And is there anything you would want to tell anybody going through this? Any nugget you would want to add?
Going through this, I would say take all the support you can get. Don't be shy, or don't stay, but don't do it on your own, because you can't. You'll burn out. So take all the support you can. And somebody asked about light at the end of the tunnel and say, why is there light not at the beginning of the tunnel? But there is really light at the end of this tunnel. And so don't feel burned out.
Can you see
and
it?
I feel like saying to those who still have their spouses with them and their loved ones with them, have a lot of fun together. Those are the things that hold me together. The fun times we had. Not so much the flamboyant stuff, but even the times when she was suffering and the fun that we made fun out of everything. And so make time, whether with kids or parents or especially spouses, to to have good times together. They hold you through. Yeah.
Fun. Thank you so much for this. Really, really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. How is it up there in Amherst?
It's
The weather?
raining now.
Okay, okay.
We're in spring where, like they say, one moment you can be wearing shorts and the next moment you need a jacket. And
Yes,
so,
yes.
but I'll tell you, it's much, much better than anything we've had in the past 6 months.
In the past.
So
Okay. Yeah. Well,
we're rolling
enjoy
well.
enjoy the rest of the weekend, and thank you so much for this. Right. Okay. Take care.
Thank you very much, Gennaro. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.